What non-horror movie would you like to see remade as a horror? I was in a community theater stage version of Charlotte's Web as a teen, and so got pretty bored of the original due to rehearsing so much. It was fun to play out your version in my head with all my old castmates in the same roles, especially since no one liked the actress who played Charlotte. She had a stage mom and she, the child actress, yelled at the rest of us kids when we did a prank version of the show The Last Dress before opening. It made her seem a bit unhinged. You know what? I'll follow you up on that. But the monsters aren't the monsters, booers. Not in the cutesy way she was in the movie, but in a we have to do everything in our power not to let her touch us way, while Sully is still the only one who knows the truth, and knows that she can't hurt them, and trying to protect her. There's no knowing where we are going, or if the river's even flowing. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is a hurricane blowing? Are the fires in hell burning? Is a grizzly reaper mowing? Yes. The danger must be growing for the rowers keep on rowing, and they certainly are not showing any signs that they are slowing. My favorite movie of all time, I'm torn. On one hand, my childhood, on the other I'm picturing a bloody Wonka slowly pacing towards a hiding Grandpa Joe singing "There's no earthly way of knowing which direction you are going." Home Alone would be so out there if it started off with the kid protecting his house from the intruders using these slapstick methods, only to wind up murdering them. But rather than call the cops, he panics and tries to hide the bodies before his family returns. But he doesn't do that in time, and one by one as the family members come across the bodies, he kills them. The movie ends with him running away in the cold, where he dies. Yeah, that's a disturbing downer email aimed RCLMCL. Roe Kirby 080 centimeters cone 1 jigsaw. They had a whole backstory about it and how it went down with his family and even Marv and Harry. Forgot to save it and can't find it at the moment. But a fun thing to imagine gears. I remember a video that the YouTube channel Dead Meat did a while back about an entitled kid who wanted to bang his babysitter, so he killed everyone, and at the end of the movie, he kills the babysitter, only to realize that she survived, and she smiled at him as she was being loaded into an ambulance and the kid realized how fucked he was. Forgot the name of the movie, but I remember it being very Home Alone-esque. The Santa Claus, the Tim Allen children's film. The plot to that movie is a man accidentally kills Santa and then slowly transforms into him. That's a fantastic premise for a Cronenberg body horror film. I'm not entirely convinced that script wasn't originally written to be a horror movie. Yes, I have been saying this too. Over the course of the movie you slowly watch Tim Allen's character be consumed by the spirit of a pagan god. He can't stop eating cookies, then his beard begins to grow at an inhuman rate, and he gains weight for no reason, and he loses control of his emotions, erupting into a rage during a business meeting about Christmas toys. Truly chilling. There's actually a theory that Matilda becomes Carrie, and that the movie is a prequel to the other. Ike, Ms. Honey develops PTSD due to her father's death / the Trunchbull's treatment of Cammy. Selbok SSCBOE Re-Rock Coamarim UU Bomarel and Matilda then change their names to start a new life, and she then turns to religion, going completely overboard and going crazy. Matilda becomes shy and antisocial due to the stress of the move and Ms. Honey's new way of living. Then the events of the movie carry Uruiari Rioeluae Marie the Choki, but even if it wasn't part of the original theory, it still works with it. Wayne's World. The real movie plays. Then, after the alternative endings, Rob Lowe's character appears on screen and says, "Let me show you what really happened." An entirely separate movie, mirroring the original plays, revealing that Wayne and Garth are delusional and kidnap local homeless people, so interview them for their talk show which is all in their heads, and then kill them. Rob Lowe is in fact an FBI agent who was tasked with bringing them to justice, which is why they perceived him as evil in the original. The Wizard of Oz. It wasn't a dream. Dorothy simply has a psychotic break blamed on trauma from the tornado. In a slowly unfolding psychological horror, I think it would do well in the hands of the right people. Think of lines like "Auntie M, Uncle Henry, you won't let her, will you?" Of course not. Now would we M? Could be supremely creepy. There have to be a ton of horror stories set in the Avengers Endgame universe. Like, a woman fights off a serial killer who breaks into her home. She's beaten and bloodied, he's got the knife raised to finish her off, and he disappears into dust. Woo, the snap saved her. She spends the next 5 years slowly putting her life together, putting the nightmare behind her. She starts dating again, falls in love, and then one day her new boyfriend stumbles out of the kitchen spitting up blood with a knife in his back. And as he falls to the floor, the serial killer steps out from behind him, because the reverse snap just happened, and he's right back in her house ready to pick up where he left off. Or one from the poverty-blipped person. There's a shy little kid who has a nice little life with his sweet mom, who loves him more than anything. Then one day he blinks, and his mom transforms in a second into a twisted version of herself, broken and totally insane from the horror of seeing her beloved son vanish into dust 5 years ago. I really enjoyed the horror element they did use with Cillian Murphy's performance. I remember seeing it in theaters in the scene where Batman sprayed him with his own fear gas, and it showed us his perception of Batman scared the shit out of me at the time. Wedding crashes. 2 guys who no one knows show up to a wedding, and at the end of the night end up kidnapping a bridesmaid, and now the police have to piece together the night and try and work out who the men are and what happened to the women they kidnapped. Not exactly a movie itself, but a director. Darren Aronofsky. I'd like to see him going full on horror. I know he flirted hard with it in some of his movies, mainly in Mother and Black Swan, maybe Pie, but I'd love to see a pure horror movie from him. Everyone always says Passengers would have been better as a thriller/horror movie, and they are right. Instead of Chris Pratt waking up Jill Errands from cryolep on their spaceship initiating the start of their dramatic, but ultimately successful relationship, instead he ends up killing her, spaces her body, and wakes up another hot chick at the end of the film, continuing the cycle. Almost any rom-com. Start out as a regular rom-com, and then about 3/4 of the way through, once the girl or guy is falling for their partner, turns out the partner is a serial killer. Maybe they walk in on them hiding a body. Just a complete twist out of nowhere. Passengers. A woman wakes up from hypersleep and is befriended and wooed by a guy who tells her that her pod malfunctioned like her point, only slowly she finds out that he was stalking her and woke her up to be with her. It turns into a cat and mouse game on an empty cruise liner starship. She's alone with a psycho who, if he can't have her, is going to kill her. Maybe she even finds his other victims. Harry Potter. Already a dark series, but just accentuating some of the creepiness. Basilisk murders, flashbacks or torture and murder/combat from Voldemort's first rebellion. Darken the Tree Wizard Cup with a few students dying, gruesome injuries on Quidditch, Dementors hunting people, and stealing students should when guarding. Literally anything that's already in the books, just get a good director to make it darker. The Smurfs. The fact that an evil wizard is trying to catch and eat them is already pretty scary for a children's cartoon, so showing that in a realistic and graphic way would be pretty gruesome. A scene of Gargamel catching a Smurf and biting its head off Attack on Titan style would be prime horror movie material. I read that the original screenplay for Splash had it as a horror film, but they changed it to a comedy. I wanna see the horror film with the same actors, Tom Hanks, Daryl Hannah, but about a human flesh-eating mermaid, or whatever. Field of Dreams. A baseball team of ghosts haunts the shit out of Kevin Costner until he snaps and begins to gill at a ball field point. He becomes estranged from his wife and son as they grow ever fearful of his ravings. After much terror and jump scares, he eventually completes the field. At the command of the baseball ghosts, he invites the town to come watch them play point. The town agrees and comes to enjoy the game. They are sacrificed by the ghosts during the 7th inning stretch. The dirt of the field is now blood mud. Point his dead wife's arm can be seen protruding from the dirt of the pitcher's mound. His son was buried beneath home plate. The film ends with Costner sitting alone in the bullpen, staring into the sunset, dreaming of Susan Sarandon. The Terminal. Just think, same film but shot from a really sinister perspective. Instead of helpers, Hank's character would slowly gain people working to actively keep him in the airport. The twist at the end would be that either he'd disappear at the end, for someone else to suddenly arrive to a closed America and the cycle start again identically, or another idea would be that they're keeping him there because of something wrong with him. Think virus has a ghost and it's an allegory of hell. Secret society in basement of airport instead of card games etc. Instead of card games etc. I think this has some serious potential. Not a movie, but that new show on Netflix called Love is Blind gave me super creepy vibes during the first 3 minutes, where the hosts were explaining the premise, having people trapped in tiny rooms by themselves, innocently trying to make connections and find love. How do they know they are not talking to a fucking sociopath who's controlling the experiment? What if it's an elaborate game, and if you don't perform well you don't make it out? Pokémon. Not exactly a movie, but there are Pokémon that literally feed themselves with vital energy and are an omen of death. And the possibilities are infinite. Hypno is said to hypnotize children and kidnapping them, for whatever reason. Other example is, imagine it's a Tanic-like situation, but you are surrounded by a gigantic sea serpent. Gyarados. Zoroark is a Pokémon that can create perfect illusions, so imagine infuriating it? Pokémon has a lot of potential, but this will never happen, since it's children-focused franchise. 50 Shades of Grey. Imagine it, a manipulative psycho Ted Bundy charmer with all the money he wants who lures you in thinking you're gonna be some sugar baby, but instead you end up being some snuff slave for his twisted sexual desires. The movie is all about the female protagonist trying to escape him. It would be more interesting than the actual novel and film. It might veer too much into cliches and well-trod territory, but I think The Truman Show could be very interesting if it went into more straight-up psychological horror/thriller territory. Is Truman actually in a TV show, or is he just crazy? I'm sure other darker element could be worked in as well. Toy Story. It's essentially the same movie the whole way through, but then during that scene at the end with Sid, Woody does a whole Marxist revolution speech about how the toys, as the inherently superior immortal plastic abominations they are, should be in charge. They rip Sid's head off, and then it's just a slow pan out as across the city we hear all the toys coming to life and taking over society. Rogue One. Don't get me wrong, I fucking loved Rogue One. It's maybe my favorite Star Wars movie, certainly up there, but the question doesn't remove the original, so we can still keep that. Here's the remake. I always hoped Rogue One would involve the plans being stolen in the first 30 minutes, followed by Vader hunting, torturing, and slaying everyone involved for 2 hours, ending with him catching up to Tantive 4th. Also, it would be cool to have a few Bothans on the team. Jim, that anger unleashed Vader/a horror. Unrated version. Limbs flying everywhere. Heads rolling. John Wick kill count. But like John Wick 1 or 2, the kill count from 3 was too excessive for what I'm imagining. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. While it's the same basis, but the X's have no limits. They actually go after Scott's social life and his home life, attacking parents and loved ones if Scott refuses to fight. Ramona is more around, but she brings in the worst out of all of the X's, which causes them to be desperate and more dangerous towards those around Scott. There's also no video game logic, and all of the deadly evil X's are all have gangs and brigades. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. While it's the same basis, but the X's have no limits. They actually go after Scott's social life and his home life, attacking parents and loved ones if Scott refuses to fight. Ramona is more around, but she brings in the worst out of all of the X's, which causes them to be desperate and more dangerous towards those around Scott. There's also no video game logic, and all of the deadly evil X's are all have gangs and brigades. Literally any Disney princess movie remade true to original text. That's some pretty horrifying shit. The Little Mermaid commits suicide after the prince marries someone else. Pocahontas was 11 and probably raped. Cinderella's sisters were mutilated and then their eyes were plucked out by birds. Sleeping Beauty was raped while in her years-long coma and woke up giving birth. They don't call them grim tales for nothing. James and the Giant Peach. Technically, the film already is an escapist type. Abused boy is suddenly able to escape with a bunch of oversized talking insects, only to be chased down by a ghost rhino and 2 murderous aunts that get arrested. If they'd end it with him in a straitjacket, then it's pretty much a horror film in the making. Toy Story and its sequels. Instead of faithful toys trying to get home, play up the revenge angle against Sid, and let it be about a disturbed little boy who has to fight for his life against the toys he abused. I think people would love a horror Barbie movie a lot more than the movies they have now, but I kinda want to see how Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy would go, because of how wacky it is. Jumanji, the original one, would be a very good horror movie. Shrek Point people come into his swamp to camp there, and he chases them and kills them. Plot twist is that he doesn't kill them, but acts like he killed them when in reality he just kicked them out to the swamp. The Taming of the Shrew, a Shakespeare comedy turned into a psychological horror movie, where a strong-willed girl is gaslighted by her husband to be a subservient wife. Thanks for watching this video. If you already subscribed, thank you very much. Public daily new videos, you can check previous videos.